All right.
Yep.
Okay, babe, what are we building today?
So I took a poll on our community page, and it was either a lightweight folding sawhorse or a planter.
Okay.
And as it is right now, it's 50-50. So I thought we might flip for it.
Good idea.
Yeah? What do you want for heads?
Let's say heads is the lightweight folding sawhorse.
All right.
Tails is a planter design. All right. Tails.
Tails it is.
And here's the planter I picked out to build. It's a 3.5 picket cedar tapered design, and it is beautiful. A few tools you're going to need: 1.5-inch brad nails, 3/4 or 1-inch brad nails, a circular saw or a table saw, a brad nailer or hand nails. You don't have to have a brad nailer. Glue, tape, safety glasses, something to mark with. In this case, I've got them all: pencil, pen, marker, a tape measure, speed square, something else to measure with, bunch of clamps. This is basically what you need to get this beautiful planter built. The first step in building your planter is to get your pattern correct. In this case, I've cut OSB into exactly 16 inches by 16.5 inches by 12 inches. Find the center mark, line it up right down the middle. That way you know you've got 8 inches at the top, and you can taper it 2 inches on both sides. For my cedar planter, I've chose to sand my fence pickets down pretty smooth to about 400. First step, take your pattern, lay it directly on top where it goes of a picket board. And when you have it lined up right where you want it, take a marker, a pencil, whatever. And just scribe down each line and cut that out. You should find this is roughly about a 7-degree angle. And now you can see what your first piece looks like after you've trimmed the edges. Now I'm going to clamp this in place because I don't want it moving. Now that you've got it clamped in place and it's lined up on all sides, go ahead and cut your next 2 pieces. When you're ready to put your second board in place, the angle simply lines up on the pattern, and then with it in place, you can mark the back side and just cut that out again. Now this is the second piece I cut. Just do the third piece the same way. Line it up again. Hold it in place. The board gets lighter, it's easier to work with, okay? When you got it held in place, just scribe that mark again and just cut it out. And here's that third piece all trimmed up.
Nice.
Now is when you go to your table saw or your skill saw. You can do this with either one. But you're going to want to rip one of the pickets down to 2 inches. And then rip 2 more pieces down to 1.5 inches. Now that you've got one of your pickets ripped, take the 2-inch piece and cut it into 4 18-inch lengths, and take one of the 1.5 inch pieces and also cut them into 4 18-inch pieces. You should have 4 18-inch legs by 2 inch and 4 18-inch legs by 1.5 inches. The next step you need to do in building this planter, once you get all 3 pieces lined up, cut the way you like them, clamp the bottom in place just like you did the top. We're getting ready to put the legs on. Now you're ready to install 2 of your 1.5-inch legs. Now I like to clamp mine and let it dry, because this way it keeps the boards nice and stiff and strong against the legs. Otherwise, even if you glue them and brad nail them, these boards are bowed, they're cupped, they're not going to glue really well on the sides. So I'm going to show you what the clamps look like after I get finished. Now that you've got your legs installed, wipe off any excess glue. It's been about 30-35 minutes. I'm going to release the clamps. I'll just build another one exactly like it.
Nice.
Now that you've got 2 of your sides built just like this, so take 2 of your 18-inch by 2-inch strips of wood. These are going to be the legs that you use for the other 2 sides. Mine, I've chose to have a sanded finish on the outside. Okay. When you build these 2 sides, if you have sanded your wood, you need to build these upside down so that when you release it, it's showing the sanded side out. If you don't do it the way I'm doing it, it will end up backwards. Make sure the edge is lined up right down with the pattern. And when this is exactly where you want it, from the top, go ahead and clamp it at the bottom. All right, now take your pattern, get your legs, lay them down flat, line them up on the pattern, top and sides. And again, if this is sanded, you want the sanded side down. You want the side that you want everybody to see down. If you don't do it this way, it will end up backwards on the reveal. So take one of the sides that you've already built after you have your legs in place. Orient it exactly that you see here. Top is the wide section. It's in front of me. I'm going to take the side and roll it over to the edge of the leg. And I'm going to line it up exactly. And I mean exactly. because this is going to determine how straight your sides are, and the finished product in your planter is going to be much better if you line this up really nicely. So when you're lined up nicely, hold it in place. Take a pin. I like to use a pin on this. It's a lot sharper line. And then you're going to want to mark the inside. And once you're pretty certain that you've left a good mark, remove the side. And put some X's. I like to put 3 X's for each 3 of the pickets. And that is where you're going to glue the pickets to. You take the same side that you just have and you flip it over to the other side. Do the exact same thing. Line it up with the outside of your leg. Again, line it up. Take your time. If you don't line this up properly, you're going to have a wonky planter, and your wife's not going to be happy. And you're going to see something like this. 2 lines, 3 X's. I'm going to show you what to do next. All right, now that you've got it where you want it, just clamp the bottom. Also, it's good to have your clamp pre-adjusted just to be ready. Okay, that one's good. Lined up top and bottom. That inside corner right with the top of my pattern. Okay. Readjust your leg if you have to, like mine. It'll slip on you a little bit until you get it locked in place. Now that you've got both of your legs marked, they're aligned, we're going to clamp them at the bottom. Have your clamp pre-adjusted. It's going to shift on you a little bit, no worries. Just snug it in place a little bit. Make any final adjustments to it. Make sure the top inside is resting at the top of the pattern, and we're not worried about the outside unless you're scribing it. That's up to you. Once I'm lined up, top and bottom, take your time with this, because again, this is the fit and finish in the final product. When you're satisfied, clamp it. Let's do the same thing to the other side. I put a block of wood in here, again, because this wood is very soft. It'll dent and mar really easy. Okay, we're in good shape. Now take a picket. You should have a picket with an angle cut. Take this, rough side up. Again, if you're not sanding it, it doesn't matter. For me, I need my smooth side to be visible when I'm done, so I'm working with the rough side. All right, we're going to take this. You're going to line it up right with that mark you just made. Line it up perfectly. making sure the top of your picket board is in line with the top of your pattern. That's what you must keep in mind. Get it exactly where it goes. Right in line with the top. And if you need to use a straight edge, something just for visual, you can put it on your pattern and just move the board right to where you need it. Once you're satisfied that you've got the board where you want it, take your pin. I'm going to show you this. Hope you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a line down here. This is the last edge that I cut off of the other side. The angle stays the same. I've got it lined up exactly where it goes on the mark I just made. Over here, you can see a line coming down the middle of the leg. So right here, if you can see this, I'm going to define it a little bit. Right where this line is, go ahead while squeezing down on this picket board, making sure that the leg's still in line, making sure that you're still on your line. Go ahead and make a mark right where that intersects. Right there. And just with your eye, visualize that line coming up through the wood. Just make a little mark. That's all we're looking for, a little guide mark. All right. Now we're going to take this piece of picket wood to the miter saw and we're going to cut that angle out. But I'm going to leave just a little bit more than what's shown because I can always come back and trim it off. I'll be right back. Okay, you can see I've got my board lined up exactly where it needs to be on the legs, clamped at the bottom, locked in place. And you see how I've left the board a little bit long here? This is just in case I mess up a little bit. I've got a little bit of room for error. So now that I see I'm right on the money, I'm going to go ahead and trim this up, and then I'll show you how I attach it. Once you have the rough dimension of the board, if you're trying to find exactly how to cut it, you just keep it on your mark, just like you see here. Then pull the board down about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch. And then it's going to expose the top line. Now all you have to do is connect that bottom line and the top line, and it will be a perfect scribe fit. Okay, now that you've got your board cut and you're ready to install it, line it up on the sides of the lines exactly like you cut it, making sure that the top legs are still in line with the pattern. Take another scrap of wood or a straight edge of some sort and just make sure again that you're lined up with the top of the pattern. Once you've got this lined up at the top of the pattern, hold it in place. Don't let it move. Now you're going to take a pen or a pencil and you're going to mark at the bottom of where this piece goes. Now when you remove this, not only do you know exactly where this piece fits, now you don't have a bunch of excess glue in place. You can glue right down to around this mark, put your board in place, come back and do the same thing on the next two. Let's put this one in place first. Okay, take some glue, spread it just above that mark you made because you don't want a bunch of bleed out going everywhere. Again, I want sanded side down. I want to be looking at the rough side because I want mine finished on the outside edge. We're going to line this up exactly with our marks. The bottom marks that you just made, that's the guide. If you put them on the bottom, you're good at the top. On the sides, what you need to be aware of is you're about to lock this down. You want to make sure when you put a hand here and you're locked down on both sides, take your brad nailer, make sure that you're lined up on the sides of your pattern. That will throw everything out if you're not. Pushing down good, put one brad nail in the middle and one brad nail near the bottom. Sometimes brad nailers can be a little tricky. All right. Do the same thing for boards 2 and 3. I'm going to get them cut and I'll show you what it looks like. Here's a real quick way to keep the boards lined up and get them cut exactly the way you need. Once you have your top board in place, simply put the picket down, mark it, on the lines, scribed against the wood exactly where it goes, and then cut that line out. Make a mark at the bottom, again, so you know where to stop the glue. All right, that's lined up nice. Also, when you're putting the middle boards on and the bottom board, make sure that they line up in the seam. If you're not being able to get a really good seam, use some clamps. Push down on it good. Let that glue really get in there. Now you're ready to move on to the bottom board. So remove the clamps at this point. Set those aside. You're going to need them in a minute. All right, now you can see it's held together. All you need to do now is get the bottom board in place. So we're going to take our picket. All right, your angle should stay the same. And you're just going to hold that in place again while you mark the edges of the leg. And now just cut that line out. Okay, another important step. You know these have been glued and brad nailed. Do you see the gap between here? This is going to throw the planter out of whack. If you want a really nice planter, you need to clamp your sides just like I've done here. Yep, it looks like it's overkill. You may think it is. If you want a really good product, this is the way to get it. If not, these sides are going to be bowed and wonky, and I don't want that. Everything clamped down. Make sure you wipe off all your excess glue. It's a whole lot easier now than it is when it's dry. All right, let these set for about 30-45 minutes. Build another one just like this. It's been enough time. Let's go ahead and release these clamps. All right, now you should have two sides like this and two sides like this. Make any final adjustments to the sides, sanding, anything that needs to be tightened up, because right now is the time to do that. All right, now we're ready to assemble. I'm going to take one of each of the sides and put it together, and I'm going to show you just how nicely they fit. Lay it down and make sure that the tops are lined up. The bottom, the legs, we're not really concerned with them right now. I'm going to show you what we're going to do later with that. But you're just wanting to make sure that the top is lined up. So as long as this looks good, you're ready to glue it in place. When you're clamping these in place, it's a good idea to just put a little piece of tape on the block. This will hold it for the clamp so you're not struggling. Because nobody likes to struggle. All right, we're lined up good. Yep, looking great. Go ahead and put some tape on that. And then you'll see how easy this is to clamp in place. With no struggling. You're not trying to make this really tight here. Just snug it up. You've got blocking in place so you're not going to mar the wood. Just a little bit. That's fine. Now we need a couple of more clamps. And you're not going to be in a rush here. Wood glue doesn't dry quickly, so you're fine. Just take your time and get it done right. Get everything lined up like it should be. Right now, what you're going to pay attention to is getting both legs lined up before you clamp it into place. It's lined up great. Wipe off any excess glue from the bleed out. Now you want to do the same thing on the other side. I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. Now when you've got both sides glued together like this, let it set for an appropriate amount of time. I'm going to let these set for about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to complete it by putting them together. All right, I'm going to put some 1.5-inch brad nails in this just for safety while this dries. Okay, now that you've got these two units glued and fastened together, go ahead and release the clamps. Let's go ahead and remove these spacer blocks. Now you're going to want to test fit them together to make sure there are no surprises. Let's see what ours look like. It's looking great. All right, so we are ready to move on to the last stage. So now that we know everything's looking pretty good, I'm going to lay the first side down that I want to glue. And just like before, we're going to run glue all in this joint area. We want a lot of glue here. This is what's going to hold everything together. And I should also mention, put glue at the bottom of the legs because they need to be mated together on that last little bit as well. So when you have some glue spread, just take a brush and make sure that everything is thoroughly covered. Put it in the corner good. Put it on all the flat of the legs. You want to make sure you've got good glue here. Usually I just put it on one side really heavy. That way I can just lay the other side on top. All I'm looking for is a good bleed out. Doesn't matter that I haven't done both sides. All right. So, yep, that's looking good. Let's go ahead and put our glue down on the other side. That's just going to set there just fine. Same thing here. A lot of glue. And now I like to put more on. The porous wood will soak up a lot of the glue just instantly. That's the reason it's always good to take your time with the glue. As I've said before, it's a lot stronger than the fasteners in the end. Once it's dried, it's very strong. Yeah, that's a lot of glue. That's the way I like it. Okay. Now we're ready. Put these together. All right, now from here, you just want to take your time and work it together. This isn't epoxy. You're not going to run out of time when it comes to working time, rather, when it comes to putting this together. So now just take your time and get everything lined up. Get all your blocks of wood ready, just like before, where you clamped everything together. You're going to do the same thing here. Like I said, it's no rush. This glue doesn't dry very quickly. So just take your time because you're wanting to make sure everything is nice and squared. Everything's in alignment. You're getting close to finishing and you don't want to mess this up now. All right. So same as before, you're going to take some tape and some wood blocking. And you're basically going to take the flat section of the wood, not where you cut it because that might not be totally flat and it could make your clamp slip off one side or the other. So just use the factory side. All right, now that you've got the basic planter together, let it dry. Come back in about 45 minutes. Okay, it's dried. Let's release the clamps. Now we're ready to trim it out. Remember the 1.5 inch piece that you had left over? We're going to now trim the bottom and the top. Sometimes I don't do this. It just depends on how I want to finish this out. Sometimes I'll put an X in the middle. There's lots of ways I finish these. But in this case, now I'm going to put a strip at the bottom and a strip at the top. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. And you're going to see that now. Looks great. Get that glued in place. Make sure they're lined up. You can just feel at the bottom. Just make sure they're lined up with the bottom of this side. Feels like everything's lined up nice. Let's take a couple brad nails. All right. The top is going to be the same angle as the bottom. It's going to be the same angle as everything else you've been working on here. 6 or 7 degrees, depending on if you're accurate on your measurements or not. So again, we're just going to make a little mark here, top and bottom. Make it a little bit long, where you've got some room for error, and go ahead and cut that out. Looks great. Let's get that glued in place. And when you're putting this in place, you just want it flush with the top. It's exactly flush with the top. And a couple more brad nails to hold it in place. That's while that glue dries. Now do this on all 4 sides. All right, now that you've got the top and the bottom trim on, you're almost done. Now we just need to trim these legs to make sure it sets flat. What you want to do is make sure that you're on a flat surface yourself. And then get a piece of board, scrap board, that's what I like to use, and just place it at the base of the planter and make a mark on both legs where it sits. And this is going to be the line that you want to cut through. So once that's cut through, do that on all 4 legs. It will set nice and flat. All right, that's the basic build of the 3.5 picket cedar planter. It's about 17 inches tall by about 17 inches by 16 inches. You can choose to put a top cap on yours if you want to. I'm going to leave it off of mine because I've got different ideas for mine. Also, you can put a floor in yours or not. I'm going to put a floor in mine because my wife wants to put out a nice plant for this one. Hey guys, if this kind of content interests you, hit that subscribe button because I've got a lot more ideas.